Okay, ladies and germs, welcome back to the HopLight channel. Again, it's been a minute, but we are live once more. And if you clicked on this video, you are here to see the HopLight Plan to Save America, Part 2, the Executive Branch. Yep, so we're going to jump into the Executive Branch for the HopLight Plan to Save America. And as luck would have it, it is an apropos day to do this episode because on Thursday, May 30th, the year of our Lord 2024, former President Donald J. Trump was found guilty on 34 counts for a felony charge. Again, I still haven't been able to figure out what felony charge exactly, but a jury of his peers convicted him in New York City on 34 counts for what essentially was a hush money agreement between him and a former porn star for a relationship they may have had almost 20 years ago. Right, so now we have what is clear, in my opinion, the weaponization of the legal system against a former president who is currently the odds-on favorite for the Republican nomination to run again in the election year of 2024. There's no doubt in my mind now that this is all a big setup. This is rigged like any other thing, like more than any other thing you could imagine. The strings that are being pulled now by the current executive branch to disable, disarm, and possibly disqualify his opponent in the upcoming election, I think is clear for everybody to see. And they're doing it through the legal system. They're doing it to make it appear as though this is legitimate. They can't outright just knock the guy off or arrest him with a military tribunal. They're doing it through the courts in the state of New York, and they're trying to derail his campaign before it even begins. I think he's supposed to reappear in July for a sentencing hearing. And people are talking about, well, I mean, in any other time in a New York court, a crime like this, whatever they're alleging, again, I still don't even know what felony he committed, is rarely given a jail sentence. And I was talking with a friend, is like, there's no way that they came this far and convicted him on 34 counts of this to not try and give him a jail sentence. And if Donald Trump, love him or hate him, or indifferent, is sent to Rikers Island prison during the 2024 campaign election year, America as a democratic republic form of government is officially over. Okay, and I had significant doubts that we would survive as a democratic republic after the 2020 election and all of the anomalies and irregularities and insane outcomes of that election. I thought that it was a done deal. You could stick a fork in America after that election. If Donald Trump is put in jail for the 2024 campaign year and through the election, this grand experiment of America is a wrap. And we are going to enter a new era of American history. But the America you knew is forever gone. It's dead. It can't be allowed to pass. And if it does pass, I don't know where we go from there because we're in uncharted waters. To my recollection, no president has ever been charged after his term in office in any court for any crime. I cannot think of a time, certainly not in modern history, maybe somebody in the comments wants to correct me, maybe I'm wrong, that a president served a term or two terms, left office, and then faced a felony charge in a state court or even federal court after leaving his term. I don't believe it's ever happened in U.S. history. And the fact that it's never happened should scare the hell out of everybody. This is how far the powers that be are going to go to keep somebody out of the White House that they believe doesn't have the right to be there. And the people and their will to elect their own representative, be damned. That's what they're saying to you. So how do we fix this? How does HopLight see us saving America via the executive branch? Well, this is just my idea. And again, a lot of people are probably going to think this is quite radical. And it is pretty radical, considering nothing like this has been tried in a Western government, at least not in the modern sense. But I think, desperate times require desperate measures. And I was listening to some YouTube clips today and listening to some sound bites, and they're going to refer to Donald Trump as like the former president, convicted criminal, and literally try to make him into this like Robin Hood figure, which is what is going to happen. The media doesn't understand it yet, but their portrayal of him as the outlaw is only going to make his legend grow bigger, like the legend of Robin Hood. But they're going to try to eliminate him as a variable in this upcoming election and find a way, if they can't at least slow him down, try to outright keep him out of it. And I think they want him to do something like refuse the court order and become a fugitive. And then they can send federal agents and apprehend him and render him back and charge him federally as a fugitive from justice. I think they want him to try that. And if he doesn't, well, they'll be satisfied with maybe sending him to Rikers Island from the month of July 2024 all the way through January of 2025. And they'll hope that will be enough to keep people from pulling the lever for him come November. But how do we avoid this possibly in the future if America is to survive as a democratic republic? Well, my idea, again, as you can see, quite radical, is to move from a single executive system and move to a triumvirate system. Now, what do I mean by that? America is a huge country. Globally, we don't have the biggest landmass. Obviously, Russia has a far greater landmass. But if you combine the United States continental with Alaska, Hawaii, we are a massive territory. And we have 330 some million people here. Approximately 300 are here legally and are legal citizens. But nevertheless, the United States, when the executive branch was created via the Constitution in Article 2, was not even a quarter of the size in landmass and population as it is today. So I think a triumvirate system would serve us very well. And how would that operate? Well, you would have 3 regions in the United States, and they would be divided equally in terms of population. And you would do it along geographic lines, right? So you would roughly find out where each portions of the population lives. Like, yeah, there are more people who live on the coast in the coastal cities than live in flyover country, but you would try to portion out as evenly as possible. And you would create a eastern, a central, and a western region in the United States. And these individual regions would elect their own president, the part of their triumvirate, which would be 3, right? That's where we get the triumvirate, the 3-person rule. And this would occur on a 4-year cycle, right? So the eastern region would elect their president. Then a year later, the central region would elect their president. And then a year later, the western region would elect the 3rd. But at no time would there be fewer than 3 elected presidents who would oversee the executive branch. And they would do it from their individual locations in the United States. Like the president for the eastern region would possibly live in Washington, D.C. The president for the central region would possibly live in Chicago. And the president for the central would live in Chicago, and the western region might live in Los Angeles or Salt Lake City, what have you, or Honolulu, Hawaii, whichever he claims is his hometown. And these elections, again, would occur on rotations. And the commander-in-chief role, which is a very important role for the executive branch, for the president, would be given to each individual president on a 2-year cycle. So if you were elected to this triumvirate, let's say you were the president of the Central region, you would be commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces for the last 2 years of your term. If you were reelected, you would be, again, the commander-in-chief for the last 2 years of that second term. And each of the presidents would have this role at least once throughout their time in office. But it would never be for the first 2 years, because this person's an unknown quantity when they enter the office. You don't want them having command of the U.S. Armed Forces on their first day in office. You would see how they acted and behaved, and if they were still considered trustworthy of that office, then they would become the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Also, these triumvirate presidents could be recalled at any time by their regions, which is similar to systems that we have for governors in some states. There's a system where you can elect a governor, and if they do something so harebrained or out of whack or become incapacitated, the people can then reconvene, hold a new election, and recall their president of their region, which means the people now have the ability to recall a president at any time during his term. That's powerful, because now it puts the power of the representative government back in the hands of the people, because they can recall this person at any time. And unlike the system we have now, which is the two-party system, Republican and Democrat, you have 3 different presidents of 3 different regions. These people are very hard to control via centralized authority. If you look at the system we have right now, they are moving heaven and earth to keep Donald Trump from running for president for a second term. But if you had 3 different presidents from different regions, this is a much more difficult system to monopolize. You have 3 different regions, 3 different election systems, and 3 different regions with ability to recall. That is much harder because it is decentralized 3 times over. All candidates also must present valid U.S. birth certificates before they run for office in their respective regions. And there was a president who served 2 terms in recent memory who didn't have to produce a birth certificate until he was challenged on it, and I think waited over 5 years to produce one. And the most people don't believe that birth certificate was actually genuine, but I won't get into that right now. But before you run in any of these regions, you have to produce a valid birth certificate that shows you are a natural-born U.S. citizen. But I'll get into immigration on a separate episode, because that needs to be fixed in a bad way. And like I said in the first episode in regard to the legislative branch, draft registration and military service would be a requirement to be one of the 3 triumvirate presidents. But before I go any further, let's read an article from Thought Company about how the triumvirate system worked historically and how I think this could be applied to the modern day American political landscape. This was written January 26th of 2019 by N.S. Gill. This is the first and second triumvirates of Rome. And it says, a triumvirate system is a system of government wherein 3 people share the highest political power. The term originated in Rome during the final collapse of the Republic. It literally means the rule of 3 men, Triumvirate. The members of the triumvirate may or may not be elected and may or may not rule in accordance with existing legal norms. The first triumvirate was an alliance of Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, who ruled in Rome from 60 BC to 54 BC. I don't say BCE because that's just a stupid term using the same exact measuring stick. But anyway, continuing. These 3 men consolidated power in the waning days of the Republican Rome. Although Rome had expanded far beyond central Italy, its political institutions, established when Rome was just one more small city-state among others, failed to keep pace. Technically, Rome was still just a city on the Tiber River, governed by a senate, provincial governors largely ruled outside of Italy, and with few exceptions, the people of the provinces lacked the same dignity and rights that Romans, i.e. people who lived in Rome, enjoyed. For a century before the First Triumvirate, the Republic was rocked by revolts from enslaved people, pressure from the Gallic tribes to the north, corruption in the provinces, and civil wars. Powerful men, more powerful than the Senate, at times occasionally exercised informal authority within the walls of Rome. Okay, let me stop there. Does that sound familiar at all? I just said today on May 30th, 2024, a day which may live in infamy, the former President of the United States was found guilty on 34 counts in a criminal indictment in New York City for a felony which has not been clearly defined. He is also, I believe, still maybe facing charges in a Georgia court, and he was found liable for, I think, slander of a woman who claimed that he, Donald Trump, had sexually assaulted her in a bookstore over 25 years ago, despite the fact that there was never a police report filed and she never told anybody else about it until Donald Trump became president. And he wasn't found guilty of actually committing the assault, but he was found guilty of calling her a liar. So yeah, that happened in New York as well. So now we have corruption and centralized power in the modern day Rome, which is Washington, D.C. And it says here, the First Triumvirate came during a time when the Republic was rocked by revolts from enslaved people, pressure from tribes in the north, corruption in the provinces, civil wars, and powerful men, more powerful than the Senate or the Congress, at times occasionally exercised informal authority over the city of Rome itself. So yeah, you have this period of just chaos and revolt and civil war, and then warlords taking power informally from the Senate and ruling over the people with an iron fist. This is what gave rise to the First Triumvirate. Let's continue. Against that backdrop, Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus aligned to bring order out of chaos, but the order was short-lived, a scant 6 years. The three men ruled until 54 BC. In 53, Crassus was killed, and by 48, Caesar defeated Pompey at Pharsalus and ruled alone until his assassination in the Senate in 44. The Second Triumvirate consisted of Octavian, Augustus, Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, and Mark Antony. The Second Triumvirate was an official body created in 43 BC, known as the Triumviri Republicae Constitutae Consulari Potestate. Consular power was assigned to three men. Usually, there were only two elected consuls. The Triumvirate, despite a 5-year term limit, was renewed for a second term. The Second Triumvirate differed from the first insofar it was a legal entity explicitly endorsed by the Senate, not a private agreement among strongmen. However, the second suffered the same fate as the first. Internal bickering and jealousy led to its weakening and collapse. Okay, I'll stop again. In my system here, that would be impossible because these three presidents would be individually elected by their regions. And this would also have the blessing of the Congress because it would be written into law. The three men bickering and wielding power over each other would not be possible because only one of them would be deemed the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And if this individual abused his authority, the other two presidents of the Triumvirate could vote, and a 2/3 vote would overcome his authority to exercise status as commander-in-chief, and then it could be reassigned to the other one of the two. Or he could be individually recalled by his region for his abuse of power. This would not just simply be three people being given emperor status to share equally. They would still be elected and responsible and accountable to the people. Continuing. First of all was Lepidus. After a power play against Octavian, he was stripped of all of his offices except for Pontifex Maximus in 36 and later banished to a remote island. Antony, having lived since 40 with Cleopatra of Egypt and growing increasingly isolated from the power politics of Rome, was decisively defeated in 31 at the Battle of Actium and thereafter committed suicide with Cleopatra in 30. By 27 BC, Octavian had retitled himself Augustus, effectively becoming the first emperor of Rome. Although Augustus paid particular care to the language of the Republic, thus maintaining a fiction of republicanism well into the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, the power of the Senate and its councils had been broken, and the Roman Empire began its nearly half millennium of influence across the Mediterranean world. Okay. That system broke down in the first triumvirate and in the second triumvirate. However, you could say, in hindsight, that the breakdown of the second triumvirate led to the birth of the new Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire as we understand it in the full sense, where it had its most glorious period, and it was under Octavian, who was the heir apparent to Julius Caesar, became Augustus Caesar. And what did we get out of Augustus Caesar? We got a period of Roman power, influence, art, literature that the Western world still looks back on and marvels at. The sole rule by Augustus Caesar ushered in the Pax Romana, which is believed to have been, give or take, 200 years of relative peace within the expanse of the Roman Empire. But like all systems, when you have one person ruling, it devolves into a system of corruption. But the Caesarian line of emperors, the dynasty, was, for all intents and purposes, a period of expansion, growth, and it was in its own way a renaissance. But it came from this triumvirate system. And the triumvirate system, I believe, is what has to take place of this current two-party system we have in the United States, because the corruption is beyond repair. The corruption in our own Congress, in our own House and Senate, is beyond repair. I believe with 3 individual presidents accountable to their own regions who share power and govern co-equally will be a sufficient division of power within the executive branch that it will still be cohesive, as in 3 people will have to agree to get things done. One person will be entrusted to run the military affairs of the country, but none of them will enjoy this position exclusively and become so corrupt as to effectively rule as a strongman did prior to the triumvirate system, as you saw in Rome. But continuing on, just as with the legislative branch, the income, the assets, and the investments of all members of the triumvirate will be open on a blockchain and will be subject to random audit via the legislative branch. The legislative branch will be able to keep these checks and balances on the triumvirate, just as the triumvirate individuals will be able to keep the checks and balances on the open blockchain audit for members of the House and Senate. Again, as with the legislative branch, the failure to pass a budget or a shutdown will equal frozen pay for the members of the triumvirate. As in, if the 3 members can't come to a consensus and 2 members out of the 3 vote to pass a budget with the House and Senate, then their pay, all 3 pay, all their pay will be frozen. So if 2 can't vote to agree, making it a 2/3 vote to pass, none of them get paid. That's their job too. And lastly, this one's important. I think this one needs to happen. The triumvirate will have veto power over Congress and the Supreme Court. So right now, the president enjoys veto power for bills that are passed by the Congress, but that veto can be overcome, I believe, with a 3/4 majority. In this case, the triumvirate could vote 2 out of 3 of the presidents to veto a congressional bill. Likewise, if the Supreme Court hands down a decision on a law that is currently on the books, the triumvirate can convene, and if 2 out of the 3 presidents vote in favor of overturning a Supreme Court decision, that decision will be overturned. So now you have a Supreme Court decision, a triumvirate veto, and then the tiebreak will go to the 3rd branch, the legislative branch. and the legislative branch will have to reconvene. And just like they will go through a regular process to pass a bill, they will have to now reinspect an old law and then vote yay or nay to keep it on the books or to allow the Supreme Court decision to become the new rule and the law be struck down. This will again restore the balance, because for the longest time, and again, this was never written down, it's not in Article 3, that the Supreme Court decision will be the supreme law of the land. What you effectively have are 9 unelected lawyers, and if 5 of those lawyers vote to strike down a law, despite the fact that everybody else in America agrees with the law and wants to stay, the 5 lawyers get their way. Under this system, that would be abolished. 2 out of the 3 triumvirate presidents could vote to veto a Supreme Court decision, and that 2-branch disagreement would go to the 3rd branch, and the legislative branch would have to reconvene and vote, yay or nay, to side with the Supreme Court or side with the 2 out of the 3 presidents that the Supreme Court decision should be disregarded. And I think then you have an executive branch that is not only held more accountable by the people of their regions, but they're also more active in the political process. It's not just a president gets elected and never follows through with any of the promises he made because, well, what does he care? He only has to make enough promises to get elected and then get reelected later on. So he just has to dust off, the old promises he made and then sell them as new again. And then once he's reelected, he can just, put that back on the shelf if he needs to use it later. The triumvirate presidents can be recalled. They have to vote almost always a 2 out of 3 majority for the executive branch to make an official decision, and they have to live in their particular regions. They cannot be removed from the people who they are most accountable to, which would be either Eastern, Central, or Western region. And those people would have more say over their executive branch, their commander-in-chief. Okay, that'll do it for the HopLight Plan to Save America executive branch. I know that's out of left field, but just today with the court decision in regards to President Trump, it's never happened in U.S. history. And there's good reason for that. It's insane. It's insane for individual states now to like cavemen with spears try to bring down the woolly mammoth. It's like New York throws a spear. Okay, well then the Atlanta district throws a spear. Okay, New York is throwing another spear. We need somebody else. Maybe you have jurisdiction over him. I don't know. Does he have a home or like anyone in Florida? Well, Florida's no good. Okay, California. Yeah, he has a home in California. He has a golf course. Yeah. Okay, throw a spear at him and say that he overvalued his golf course in California, in Los Angeles County, and then we can bring down the mammoth that way. It was never meant to be that way, and now it's becoming a banana republic where individual districts, like cavemen in a pack, a tribe, hunting down a mammoth with their spears, are able to bring down a former president through the legal system. And he was never charged with any of this before 2016, even though many of these charges, quote unquote, occurred well before the year 2016. Some of these occurred before the year 2000. It's insane. It's bonkers. And I don't care if you hate President Trump or you love him or you have no opinion either way. The precedent that is setting will change this country forever if he is not allowed to run for office and win office and then retake the White House as the next president in 2025. If he's confined to a jail cell and is not permitted to campaign and become the people's representative for the Republican Party, you don't have a Democratic Republican form of government anymore. We're going to get one-party rule, and it's going to be whoever is subject to more jurisdictions, and whichever tribe can sue that individual in jurisdictions to the point where they can no longer run because they're either broke from defending themselves, or they're now going to have to go to jail in some city's, prison system and sit out the next campaign and miss the opportunity to actually sell themselves to the people. It's lawfare. It's banana republic stuff. And I see this triumvirate system as a way we could potentially avoid that. Maybe for good, because it's much more difficult to centralize power in that system as it's drawn up. Anyway, if you agree, if you disagree, that's what the comment section is for. I appreciate you being back here. I might be off the grid for the next several weeks, but I will get out the next video for the judicial branch, how we save America, and the changes that'll have to be made for the judicial branch. But I appreciate you being here nonetheless. And if you liked it, give us a thumbs up, a subscribe. All this stuff I talk about is definitely shadow banned. It's considered wrong think. So if you want to rebel against the system, give us a thumbs up for the wrong think. And we will see you back here next time. Till then, take it easy.